What is going on, everybody? It is that time of year again. Football is back. We have been through the offseason, free agency, the draft, mini camps, the dog days of summer, training camp, preseason has all led us to this point. We are currently 1 week away from the first Sunday of the NFL season. Obviously, it gets started on Thursday with the Ravens and Chiefs. Friday, the Eagles and Packers play in Brazil. And 1 week from today, the Atlanta Falcons are back on the field playing meaningful football with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback, Raheem Morris as our head coach, and expectations that have just been building over the course of this offseason, finally time to be fulfilled. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Honestly, I kind of said this. I'm so excited. When you're having a good time, it goes by pretty quickly. I'm honestly shocked that we're just 1 week away. It still feels like, we should be, it still feels like we're in July. We should be a few months away. But when you actually have something to look forward to, when you have a season to look forward to, this is what happens. And obviously the expectations are sky high for this team this year. Getting Kirk Cousins in the offseason, Raheem Morris being brought back to Atlanta, this time as officially the head coach of this football team. Obviously the pieces on offense, and even in the past few weeks, the additions of Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. Man, it's finally time now for football to be played. And it's time for me to get my predictions before we get to that football. And obviously, the expectations are really high this year, in my opinion. I mean, last year, the expectations, as we all know, were high for a lot of reasons. But this year, I really don't think there's an excuse. We know that this team has to be a playoff team, and it's time for results. And without further ado, let's get right into these predictions. Starting off, week 1, Sunday, September 8th. We're just 1 week away from it. The Falcons back in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, opening up another season against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a very familiar face. And Arthur Smith is Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator. Mike Tomlin, obviously the Steelers head coach, has been for a really long time. And this is the game. Ever since the schedule came out, everyone has been looking forward to. We get to see Kirk Cousins in this offense in action. We get to see this defense. We get to see finally what the Raheem Morris Falcons look like. And this is one test to open up with. And obviously, Mike Tomlin is a very good head coach. And Arthur Smith, we know all about what he is. And I can guarantee you that Arthur Smith he's going to come in here with all sorts of crazy stuff drawn up and having a fever dream of wanting to execute. So this is a very big game. This is a very big game. And in my opinion, what I really feel like you have to look at with Pittsburgh is obviously the biggest story for them has been the quarterback dilemma. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, both on that roster. Russell Wilson is going to be starting, but Mike Tomlin has said, we got every reason to believe him because we have seen Arthur Smith, that Justin Fields is going to be present in this game. He's going to get snaps. There's going to be plays with him involved. What I really think the story has to be here is we're all going to want to be seeing Kirk Cousins. We're going to want to see Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan and Algier. And I still think the offense, the offense is going to be present, and they have to make their mark on this game. But I'm really looking at the defense, and I really think the defense could be a story here in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Falcons, they get the win. They start off the season 1-0. They start the season off right with a win versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I honestly think you look at that score I predict, 26-7. I think that the story in this game could be the defense. Now, you can also make the argument, who would you rather face? Would you rather face Russell Wilson? Would you rather face Justin Fields? I think with Pittsburgh, the mess that we have seen at the quarterback position, and, you can obviously look at us with the new OC, the new head coach, but we are absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, the more stable situation in this game. We're ready to play ball. There's a lot of chatter in Pittsburgh about that quarterback situation. What is the leash on Russell Wilson? What's the leash on Justin Fields? And we know Arthur Smith, when there's a lot of chatter, he's going to do whatever he wants. He is a desperate motherfucker. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of what he does could really come back to bite him. I think that, honestly, I'm not expecting a big game out of Kirk Cousins in week 1, and I'm going to talk about it later in the week more so, but I'm not really expecting a big game from Kirk Cousins week 1. I think this could be a big spot for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. I think both of the running backs could really be the story on the offense, but wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Matthew Judon is the story on the defense. If you see Jesse Bates once again, like he did in week 1 last year, be the story making plays. I think the Falcons, they start the season off right, get a win here to open it up, go to 1-0. Next up, we have week 2, Monday Night Football in Philadelphia. The Falcons and the Eagles once again meet in prime time. Obviously, the Falcons and Eagles have had memorable prime time meetings in the past, and they meet once again here in prime time. Now, the Eagles made a lot of additions this offseason. They added Saquon Barkley. They do have a younger secondary. But I got to be honest. I feel like a lot of these games this season, you can make the argument for both sides. Obviously, I hope the Falcons can win every game. I hope they can go 20-0. They can go 17-0 and win the Super Bowl. That's not going to happen. But I honestly feel like most of these games this season, you can make the argument for the Falcons to be in. I think this is that one game. I hate saying it, but I really honestly don't see the Falcons winning this game. I just don't. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think first of all, can you tell me the last time that the Eagles have lost a primetime home opener? I can't. They typically always in their home opener and in prime time, those are always the types of games that they're almost always guaranteed to win. Now, I will say, if the Falcons are going to win this game, if they do win this game, it means that Kirk Cousins came out and he threw for 300 yards. He threw for 4 touchdowns, and he really took advantage of that young secondary. But I honestly don't see that happening. I especially think when it comes down to the trenches, and you can't win that dogfight, you're kind of doomed. So I think the Eagles win here 28-13. I honestly think this is just going to be that one of those games that I honestly, as much as I want to be wrong, I don't see us winning. Heading on to 6 days later, though, and it is Sunday Night Football coming back to the bins. The Falcons are back on NBC, back on Sunday Night Football for the first time in 5 years. I do think we had a preseason game on Sunday night, but we know that doesn't matter. It's the first time in 5 years that the Falcons have been on Sunday Night Football. It is at home. It's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And on top of that, it is against Patrick Mahomes. It's against that man. It's against that dude. It is against the Kansas City Chiefs. Whether you love the Chiefs, whether you hate the Chiefs, they are the team right now. Patrick Mahomes is the guy. He is number one. He is the face of the NFL coming into Mercedes-Benz Stadium on a Sunday night. Let me go ahead and first of all say, I absolutely it is been given to us. We have talked about it all off season. These first few weeks of this schedule is maybe for this Falcons team the toughest you could think of. At the same time, you want to see what this team is made of early. I have a chance to win this game, and I think that's for several reasons. Number one, the energy has to be brought by default. It is Sunday night. It is in our house. And yes, there are going to be the Chiefs fans in there, but it is in our honoring Arthur Blanken. So obviously that's going to, have that team fired up to an extent, but it's Sunday. I think Raheem Morris understands how much that means to be back on Sunday night for the entire world to be watching us going up against the team that has been the best team in the entire world in Patrick Mahomes. But I think we can do it for several reasons. Number one, it's that energy. Number two, if you're going to get the Chiefs, you're getting them early. There was the game, I want to say, in 2022 that they lost versus the Colts. They shouldn't have lost. They lost last year versus the Lions. It was a game they shouldn't have lost. They lost a few games in 2021 early. They shouldn't have lost. It's their first away game. I think the Falcons are going to pull this off. I think that the Falcons, and I feel very bullishly stands. Now, obviously, that's a very crazy take, but this team has to have that coming out party, has to have that statement game that talk wasn't for nothing. And waking up the next morning and being reminded this is why we got Kirk Cousins as our quarterback, because he is the guy that with all these playmakers we have, he is the quarterback that can get it to Drake London. And I feel, listen, a lot of things have to go right in this game. You're going to have to be able to protect Kirk Cousins. Obviously, the defense, the newly revamped defense now with Justin Simmons and Matthew Judon, they're going to have to come and they're probably going to have to play the best game of the entire season for us to be able to win this game. But I think it can happen. I think it can happen. And I'm going to go ahead and say the Falcons win this very bullishly, regardless, because it is Patrick Mahomes. And Taylor Swift might be in the building as well. To the next week, back in that 1 o'clock slot, but we break out that game, and we are welcoming the Aints into town. And let me go ahead and say, I think regardless of what happens, these first few weeks, especially in that Chiefs game, there are probably two games, both pertaining to this exact logo, that I honestly think, as I said, I don't see us really winning the Eagles game. That regardless of what happens, I don't see any way the Falcons are going to lose these two games. I think this Aints game, is one of those games where I just do not see where we're going to lose this game. I think if it doesn't happen on Sunday night, it's going to happen here regardless, because this is going to be the game that the offense explodes, and we see that the Saints are not going to have an answer. They're not going to have an answer for this offense. And New Orleans just continues to age with that defense. New Orleans for years and years have been putting off a rebuild. And I just do. But I think that the Saints are kind of shut out of look in this 3-1 on the season and win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. I don't think this should be a close game. 4 days later, we're back at home. We're back rocking the red helmets, back rocking that old school logo on Thursday Night Football, and we're welcoming the Buccaneers into town. Now, unlike that Saints game, I think this could very well be a trap game. The Buccaneers always play us tough. They all, even in both meetings, regardless, they're always going to play us tough. And that's really how it was before Tom Brady. That's how it was with Brady, and that's how it was last year. And even though I do think Tampa could be in line for a regression, I still are they're going to be the team in this division that is going to give us obviously the toughest fight because they've been the division champs the past 3 years. But I will say where I do think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give us the win here. I think it being a Thursday night game at home, I think that advantages us. Now, granted, it's not a far travel. That's why I say this could be a trap game, but I'm going to advantage us here just because it's a Thursday night game and it is at home. If it was in Tampa, I probably would have to give it to the Bucs. But just because of the fact that it is in our house, we got to protect the Bens. And this is Matt Ryan's game. This is the game he's getting honored at. We can't lose this game. Just can't. Even though, we could, but I do think we're going to win this game ultimately just based off the fact that Thursday night typically advantages the home team. So I'm going to go ahead and give us the win. Next game, after that, those first 5 weeks were 4-1. We're feeling really good about ourselves because what was supposed to be the toughest part of our schedule, we made it. We travel up I-85 to take on the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, a 4:25 kickoff, which I will say, I think when you look at Carolina, you got to look at it. You can't go any lower. The only place for them to go at this point is up. But with it being still pretty early in the season and Dave Canales still getting things figured out with Bryce Young, I do think that the Falcons are going to be able to come in and finally, hopefully, as long as it does not rain, I think we can win this game. Maybe there's a few clouds in the sky, maybe a little overcast. As long as that's the case, we should be able to win this game. So hopefully that is the case. But I do think the Falcons, it's finally time that we beat the Panthers in Charlotte again. We used to really just go up there and go up to Charlotte. That used to be an automatic win. These past few years, it really hasn't been. It's time to win again in Charlotte. Time to reestablish Bank of America Stadium as Mercedes-Benz North. So I do ultimately think the Falcons, even though I do think that you got to come and you got to play this game. I could see there being a scenario, just like with the Bucs game. Maybe this is a trap game. But I do think because it's early in the season, the Panthers are still getting things figured out as, young head coach, a young quarterback, and a lot of moving pieces still there. I do think that ultimately the Falcons go into Charlotte and take care of business. Next week, we come back home and we face the Seattle Seahawks. And Seattle is one of those teams that really just feels like they're there. They hired Mike Macdonald as head coach. Obviously, he's a great defensive mind. Typically, you see a lot of these teams go for the offensive mind at head coach. Seattle decided to go for the defensive mind. It's definitely interesting. But with Geno Smith at quarterback and, Tyler Lockett's getting up there in age, they do have DK Metcalf. And the defense still kind of iffy. In my opinion, even though I will say, this stretch week 5 to week 7, if, let's say the Falcons get out to a fast start, could be subject to a trap game one of those weeks. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give us the win here. And we take care of business that day. It is 1 o'clock as well. Kirk, this is Kirk's type of game. game right. Late October, maybe, it's a perfect weather day. Maybe the roof is open. I think we can go ahead. I think we can get the win, extend the win streak to 5, go to 6-1 on the season. We're riding high. And then we got to go to Tampa, face the Buccaneers for the second time in 4 weeks. And we got to lose a game at some point because regardless, listen, we can say we have an amazing team. We got to lose a game at some point. And this will probably be the game that we lose. I ultimately, even though Tampa, a lot of people can say that they are due to take a step back, you still got to admit one thing, and it is that you have to show respect to them. They still have Mike Evans, and you're going to lose a game at some point, and it's probably going to be this one. And they're wearing their creamsicles too. That obviously, like when we put on those red helmets, when they break out those creamsicles, that really excites them. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give the Buccaneers that game. We come back home the next week. We're still 6-2. We come back home and we got another big game versus the Cowboys. Now, the Falcons have not beaten the Cowboys since the Adrian Claiborne 6-sack game, the first year the bench was open. I personally think that the Cowboys, I really don't know a lot of what they're doing this year. It feels like with them losing Dan Quinn, bringing Zimmer in, and, obviously, Dak is still there. They did pay CeeDee, but it feels like they're kind of in a lame dunk situation in many ways. And it's time we beat the Cowboys again. And it's a 1:00 game also. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give us the win here. I do think it's going to be a shootout. It is a game that could go either way, just because the fact either way, I still ultimately think, though, the Falcons come out, they get the win here, take care of business, and go to 7-2 on the season. Next game, going down to their swamp, going into their house. And I'm going to go ahead and say we have a year we went to the Super Bowl. I think this is the year we finally sweep them again. I truly think that this is going to be the year that I think things are going to fall apart in New Orleans. I think it has to at some point. And all been down there at the very end of last season, I can guarantee you, even though, yes, it is a different head coach, it had last year. I can guarantee you, Raheem Morris, he's seen that. And he's going to, have his ass going back into that swamp. And they're going to look to do everything they can to just hand the Saints their ass. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Falcons are finally going to be able to pull out the brooms on the Aints once again. And we're going to get that sweep. Moving our record to a very, very impressive 8-2. Now, next game we got here, speaking of the Aints, the Aints former head coach, Sean Payton, now the head coach of the Denver Broncos. As we go to Denver, we're really kind of making our first, travel of the season, going to Denver. Even though we talk about, there's going to be a game or two we win that we shouldn't. There's also going to be, in my opinion, you're talking about trap games, a game or two that, you lose that you shouldn't. I honestly get the vibe that this could be one of those games, that this could really be a trap game. That the Falcons, this is a game that we lose that we look at and we say, we should have won this game. But when you're having to go into Denver with, that altitude, that obvious, and also, you just consider the fact this is a really weird kind of, even though you were on, in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, I just think this is, in my opinion, a trap game. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this one to the Broncos. Now, week 12, bye week, we're finally able to take a rest. We are still 8-3. So we're still in a very solid position heading into the home stretch. Week 13, we're back at home, December 1st. It is now officially December. It is the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And we're one hardball into town. And whenever the Falcons and Chargers play, things can get very crazy. We know what happened in 2022 at the end of the game where we literally just handed it to them. And I'd honestly make the argument that's where that season really kind of went down the gutter. In 2020, obviously, we had a chance to win that game and we couldn't pull through. And then in 2016, the year we went to the Super Bowl, we had a 10-point lead on them late, but we ultimately ended up blowing that game too. So these games against the Chargers have not been in our favor. And honestly, in my opinion, though, I do look at this. I feel like this is where you kind of get that vibe that things are, kind of different. And I am high on the Chargers. I think a lot of people that think the Chargers are just going to be this awful team, even though the fact that Jim Harbaugh, he always finds a way to get the best out of his team. So this is going to be another tough game. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this to us just because of the fact that, it is so late in the season for the Chargers. They're coming here to Atlanta, even though this is one of those games that it was honestly tough to predict. I could definitely see us losing this game. I could see, us once again finding a way to let this game go, and blowing it. But I don't think that's going to happen this time around. I think it's about time we do beat the Chargers. I do think it's probably going to come down to the end again, but game-winning field goal, whatever, gets us into the win column for that one. Next game we have week 14, and it is Kirk's homecoming to Minnesota. It is his revenge game. And honestly, looking at the Vikings, it's not like the expectations were high for them this year. Sam Darnold for a lot of the season, as their starting quarterback. It feels like, and along with this being, be a game where if you win, you're able to officially lock up a playoff spot, or maybe in the division for all we know. So ultimately, in my opinion, I think that this is going to be a game that Kirk comes into Minnesota. He takes care of business. He shows the Vikings why they should have paid him, but at the same time, I do think the Falcons are going to be able to come in. Offense puts on a show, and we're going to be able to pick up that win and move to 10-3 on the season. Next game we have here, it is another Monday night game. Now, I'm going to be honest with y'all, especially with the fact that they're now flexing Monday night games. I would not be, just because I really don't know how good the Raiders are going to be. But, obviously you hope it does stay in both cases. It just does not seem like a Kirk Cousins thing this year. To be completely honest, I think we once again talk about another trap game, and the Falcons are going to have, more than one game that they lose that they shouldn't. In my opinion, I think this Raiders game could really be a trap game, considering the fact across the country, And also the fact that Kirk does this is just not the honestly see come out and win this game. Even though I clearly think we're the better team than them, it's any given Sunday. That's probably how this game is going to go, and the Raiders are probably going to upset us. Coming back home, though, week 16, we're once again in those red helmets, throwback logo at midfield, and we're facing the New York Giants. And I said this, when I was talking about these, and I honestly think that the Falcons, there's no way they should lose these games. I think this is the other game. This Giants game, in my opinion, and what the Giants are this year, outside of, you got to give respect to Dexter Lawrence and Thibodeau and Brian Burns. But really, outside of that, the Giants, Daniel Jones, that's just an absolute disaster. So I personally think if the Giants, for several reasons, I think this could be a game you see that doesn't even really matter, that pass rush, especially. This could be a game where Falcons are just getting lapsing on the Giants, in my opinion. So at the end of the day, I think, this should be a light work. This should be another easy win. Falcons go to 11-4 on the season. Heading in, Falcons once again for the fourth straight year have call them. We face Washington again for the fourth straight year, and obviously the past 3 years we have not been able to get them. Now, Washington is a team I am high on this season. I like Jaden Daniels in the situation he's in. And in my opinion, I think it's a lot like what the Texans were last year. And even though I'm not a Dan Quinn fan, I do think from what I've been seeing, it looks like he is doing an all right job in Washington, at least compared to what they've dealt with the past few years. And obviously, it's a new ownership group. There's a lot of excitement. And I also, because at this point in this scenario, 11-4, that should definitely be enough to clinch the division by this point. In my opinion, you don't want to say that, and obviously Kirk is going to want to go hard for this game because this is his other former team. This is where he started his career at. Raheem Morris also was in Washington. So there's a lot of, animosity, and a lot of, storylines in this game also. But in my opinion, I feel like that I don't want to say the Falcons are going to take it lightly, but I just feel like Washington is going to have more that they are hunting, more that they are, playing to gain. And I do think even though listen, we have to beat Washington at some point. I don't think, even though I would love to see us do it, and I think it's possible. I think that the Falcons are still in a fight for a division title or still fighting for a playoff spot. Then, yeah, I think, there could be a better chance for us winning this game. But I also just think it feels like to me this Washington game, maybe this is where they're fighting for a playoff spot and they're going to really, have to come out and play hard this day. And also, you kind of would rather be safe than sorry, especially on this, the turf that we all know, FedEx Field or whatever it's going to be called now has. But yeah. So I do think the Falcons do drop this game, and that leads us to the final. We say, I think this game is so tough to predict just because you really honestly, if we've already locked the division up, we've really we're locked into our playoff spot. You can see I could honor Penix get a good bit of playing time in this game, even if Kirk starts it off. That's the thing about the final week of the season. And who knows where the Panthers are? You'd have to honestly, how better are they good enough to make the playoffs? Not yet, at least. So ultimately, I am going to go ahead and say that I'm going to go ahead and give us the win here because you got to sweep the Panthers. It's been 5 years since we've swept Carolina. We got to sweep them once again. We got to break those brooms out again on the Panthers. With that being said, I think the Falcons in 2024, I think we're going to go 12-5. I think we're going to be in 2024 NFC South Division champions. I think when it's all said and done, I think we're going to be the number 3 seed in the NFC. Obviously, I think, you can really look at that win total and maybe you can definitely make the argument 12 is on the higher end of what this team is capable of. Maybe 10 or 11 is the more, popular pick, popular opinion. I could definitely see that. As I say, the Chiefs game, for instance, very bullish of me. And there's also some other games that, maybe not a lot of people have too much confidence in. But I think when it's all said and done, listen, you keep in mind that this has to be a season, in my opinion, where regardless, you got to make the playoffs. You got to win the division, in my opinion. And with the signing of Matthew Judon, with the signing of Justin Simmons, that honestly, in the past few weeks, have really, if I would have made this prediction a few weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have said that Chiefs game is a win. I probably maybe would have said we drop 1 or 2 more games. But that's honestly what I think. The reinforcement on defense that we've gotten in the past few weeks, it really does matter. And you have a guy like Matthew Judon, playing with his ass on fire almost because he wants to get paid. He wants to prove a point. You have Justin Simmons playing by Jesse Bates, creating all of a sudden now the best safety duo in football with a guy like A.J. Terrell, who did just get paid. And you got obviously the offense that we know about. So in my opinion, and I know I've said that a lot in this video, this finally, I feel like, is going to be the year that this team breaks through, gets back to the playoffs, and we finally get some playoff football in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Obviously, it's been a long video, but man, the season is coming up on us. I am so excited for Thursday. I'm excited for Friday, and I'm so excited for Sunday. And with that being said, I will see you all. I will be doing picks again. Probably going to have the picks video out Tuesday. That's probably going to be when I do my picks video like I did last year. But with that being said, I will see you all in the next video. And thank God football is back.